everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm back with another quick book review. So I decided to read Never Tell by Selena Montgomery, and the reason I did is because last year I read While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams and I really enjoyed it, and I will admit this was a complete read based off of the name, which is not something that I normally do, but I decided to jump in and be curious because, like I said, I read her most recent release based off of the name and liked it. I don't know much about Stacey Abrams other than she used to write romantic suspense and she was a big influential part of the 2020 election. So most of her backlist is being re-released because prime time for publishing to capitalize on her name. I mean, publishing is a business. So I was seeing a lot of the re-releases, but I hadn't checked out any of them yet. I have heard some mixed things about some of her other re-releases. I don't know how much these publishers are revising these stories while they're releasing them again. So in the beginning of the audiobook, at least, she has this little, you hear her in the beginning saying about how great it was to revisit these characters, and I'm like, I understand that the book was set in another time. I didn't know going into it when the book was originally released, but when you start reading you realize it was released in 2004 initially. The story is set in 2004, and in my opinion it's stuck in 2004 in the worst of ways. I don't have a problem reading backlist romance. I actually have been reading a lot of backlist romance, black romance through Hoopla, and I've been enjoying some of it. But the problem comes in, and sometimes there's stuff in it that was okay then, which is not okay now. And that is where this one had problems. So not in 2004 because I was very young then. So I wasn't really reading any type of romance. I was still on my little kid books. But like around 2006 is when I started watching soap operas, like as I was a preteen, going into my teen years. And during I want to say about 2008 through 2011, I definitely read a lot of books that had published in 2004, and I was reading some more chick lit during that time and eating up that romance back in the day. So there were a lot of stuff in here I'm like, yeah, back in the day I probably would have really enjoyed this, but this, as an adult now, I'm like, yeah, that was wrong. That, the way women were kind of written in some of these stories was very questionable, and I can't stand behind some of that writing now. So first of all, this book opens up with very graphic violence, which again, because I was watching those soap operas, I'm like, okay, I can't see a book like this opening up with such graphic violence in 2022, but back then definitely I was watching daytime TV and seeing women being raped for characterization. So yeah, I can see that. I can see how it opened up being kind of like normal back then and nobody would have bat an eye. So this woman, it opens up with this woman being attacked, and she's escaping. She literally ends up escaping an abusive relationship, and I'm not going to get too much into what went on in those early scenes, but it's graphic. And she leaves, starts a new life, becomes a professor who is a criminologist, and then she starts getting these notes from her past alluding to what happened back then, and she ends up joining forces with the owner of a local newspaper to find the serial killer. And the mystery slash suspense part could have been okay, but it was constantly undercut with the romance, and the romance was just horrible. So the hero is extremely pushy and constantly crosses her boundaries, even despite her saying no and trying to put some distance between them. He figures he knows what's best for her, and he's basically forcing her into this relationship even though at times she feels uncomfortable. And I didn't like that at all. I also thought they had no chemistry, which made it so much worse. And he, for lack of a word, was just coming off really aggressive and forceful, and that didn't work because she is a survivor of abuse. So what part of like the backstory within this abusive relationship is she was a child prodigy. This older man was her mentor who kind of groomed her. Something happened where her parents got into an accident and died, and he took her in. So he started like raising her when she was a teen, and he wouldn't let her go out and hang out with her friends. She had to always be in with him, and he got obsessed with her and was beating her, and he did actually try to rape her, which I don't understand how like this was written, how he just tried to. And it does actually go into graphic, like a little bit graphic about with a flashback, or at least a description about how he tried to, and she fought him off. But I'm like, she was living with him, it would have definitely happened. So the book kind of paints this idea that she is still a virgin and pure, and that is very early 2000s too, and it was gross. And I didn't like that. And like, if you're gonna go there, go all the way there. But that part I hated. So of course we had to deal with these shy virgin tropes in the story too that were awful. And again, very, very forceful hero. So there was actually a scene that should have been revised out. I don't understand who edited this book for the release and clearly they didn't read that scene and say, oh, you know, consent was questionable there. So a lot of past romance, you have these scenes where like the woman is waking the man up with the blowjob, or the man is waking up the woman with oral, and I'm just like, that's not consensual. So it had like one of those sex scenes where he was waking her up with oral, and this was like right after their first time, and she woke up and she was all into it. I'm just like, why wasn't this rewritten? Because that's not consent. Like, he was already doing stuff to her while she was asleep. That should have been rewritten. It's one thing to have picked up like the exact backlist copy, like in a thrift store or something, and read it. It's another thing for them to tell me in the beginning of this book that it was revised and revisited for 2022, and clearly that scene was not. And there were little things, like little things throughout that I'm like, that could have been edited out. And some of them I feel like the descriptions of her silky hair, the editor would have probably not realized and looked past how that was a problem based off of beauty standards. Then it was fine. Now it's a little and there was one thing that, and this was a nitpick for me, and it wasn't as big, I know it's not as big a deal, but it bothered me, was that one of the victims was a calypso dancer, and they said calypso was native to Jamaica. It's not. This is somebody whose family comes from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, where calypso is actually native and originated. And one thing, and especially back in the day, was that a lot of people in America only knew Jamaica for the Caribbean, and they applied every genre of music that came out of the Caribbean to Jamaica and gave them credit for everything. And that today, obviously a lot of people know more about the world, so that happens a little bit less, but it still happens. So that kind of pissed me off deep to my core as Trinidadian person. I'm like, not everything is Jamaican. So that little tidbit annoyed me. And like I said, there was just little stuff sprinkled here and there that felt very, very old, that could have been revised out. But that non-consensual or questionable consent sex scene, definitely they should have edited that one. I don't know why why Stacey didn't edit that one out. I don't know why her editor at Martin's Press didn't say, you know what, let's change this. I don't know what they changed in this book. I would actually love to see where the edits were made, because it doesn't feel like it was revised at all. It feels like they just slapped a new cover on it and hit reprint to get those sales based off of her name, which again, publishing is a business. I understand. Now's the time to really shine and get her books sold that weren't sold as much back then because of the way publishing didn't want to promote these stories. But there was just stuff that does not work for 2022. And this is actually one of the books that was optioned for a TV series too. So I can definitely see why they optioned it for a TV series, because at its the bare bones of it is a professor who knows how the minds of criminals work and can solve these serious cases, and she's working with the owner of a local newspaper. I can easily see that being a successful show. The problem is then, if it were to become a successful show and you love the couple based off their chemistry on the TV, and then you come into this story where they really have no chemistry and there's some questionable behavior in it, and that would be kind of glaring. So I know they've been re-releasing a lot of her other books. Somebody told me they read a different one that also didn't hold up. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna how to proceed with checking out her backlist, if I want to check out the rest of her backlist, or just continue reading her newer stuff, as she's grown as a writer and she's writing not romantic suspense. So it's more focused on the thriller aspects with her newer writing. Or at least if I do check out her backlist, I would probably check out one of the more recent ones. And I understand the time, but I just feel like they could have edited this one better to actually update it to 2022. So if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. If you've read any Selena Montgomery stories, let me know which ones you read, and if you think I should read them. And thanks so much for watching, and I will check in with you guys soon. Bye!